सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः वशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। So I hope I can go through without any bouts of coughing, which has been happening. It is a natural outcome of the illness that I had. So I already have one Ricola with me, and I've got a couple of others, so hopefully we'll be okay. It's interesting, I was just thinking that when the body is sick, it is obviously very difficult to, unless you are a jnani, you are a brahmanishta, to get complete ananda. Even without the body being sick, it is not easy. This is what we are learning. But when the body is having something wrong, then it is not easy to have the experience of ananda. But it's interesting that as one progresses in the understanding of what's going on, what is the self, who are me, etc., as you begin to eat, you begin to take the right kind of knowledge and reflect on it, then even though you may not have complete ananda, your downside becomes limited. And this was quite a serious thing because I had fever for 4 or 5 days and infection and all kinds of things, difficulty in breathing. So I went through this whole experience. What I found was that if you are an ajnani, not having been exposed to this vidya, then the dukkha is a little bit more pronounced. And how it's pronounced is that if you have some illness, you feel, I am ill. You don't make a distinction about, which part of you is ill. You feel, I am ill. And so that makes it worse. What I found was that with this knowledge, which I am still growing into, I'm not a Jivan Mukta yet, but what it does is, it makes you exaggerate less. Makes you mean your own thinking. So for instance, yes, it was suffering because I had difficulty breathing, and if you cannot breathe, then your mind is also affected, and so it's not pleasant. I'm not saying that it was pleasant. But what I found was that I had a dialogue with Ishvara. And initiated by myself. And I said, I am no longer oblivious of the fact that in my body at this time, there are probably a million things that are going right. But one thing or two things are not going right. And so, by just thinking that, you appreciate. My eyesight gone? No. Is my heart not functioning anymore? No. Is my circulation system, my hunger, everything was well. But the lungs had a problem. And so with doing this, you limit your dukkha to a large extent. Very instructional, really, to do that. And then you have a smile on your face and saying, that's okay. Whatever the prarabdha is, I'll go through with this. That doesn't change my estimation of who I am, what my status is. But in the meantime, this covering of that ananda is acceptable. So anyway, I just thought that being fresh from that episode, I would just make those points. Anyway, let's resume our study. So, as you know, we'll talk in more detail about this, about the purpose of life. And so very quickly, the purpose of life is to discover total ananda, total unconditional happiness. That is the goal of everyone in this life, of every living being. And in the process of discovering that, we make some mistakes because we don't have the right information to make a judgment about who I am, what's going on in my life. And as a result, I make some mistakes. So these mistakes, as we've talked about it before also, I'm just giving you a summary of that. These mistakes is not as though you are incapable of being a complete person. Brahman is a complete person. It's not as though you are already Brahman. But there is an obstruction for you to understand that. This is an important thing to see because the process of removing my mistakes is like cataract. It is not some fundamental problems with the retina. I have a very close relative that has been losing his eyesight, and a lot of problems with his eyes. And recently he consulted with some doctors, and they gave him the bad news. They're saying, I'm sorry, this is going to get worse. Now the question is, can he survive without being totally blind? He's already given up driving at night time and stuff like that. So there you have a basic disease that you cannot really correct. But in the case of the human being, of not being able to understand that I am the complete being, it is not a disease, it is an obstruction. This we must keep in mind all the time. And the Shastra says this obstruction can be removed if you follow these steps, like performing a minor cataract surgery. So it's not a big deal, it's a procedure. Really, it's not a surgery, it's a procedure, as the the doctors make that distinction. Because I had one cataract done about, I don't remember, a couple of months ago. So this is the situation. So in the Mandukya Karika, it says this is a procedure. It will go. You will be able to see yourself as a complete being, unlimited being. But there are some steps involved where you are making a mistake. So this is what we're studying. So we are saying that Prathama Padaha. Prathama Padaha means the first step. A step-by-step procedure to remove a sense of limitation. So the sense of limitation is not real, it is perceived. So exactly the same examples that we've used, but now we will give more flesh to it, more body to it, in understanding how this perceived mistake is made. Traditional examples we've been giving is that the wave of the ocean is really none other than the whole ocean. But because of making a mistake due to some reasons, abhyanam, because of ignorance, it takes the formful part of itself as its whole thing. Same thing with the room space. There's no real difference between Mahakasha and Ghatakasha. Mahakasha means the total space. Ghatakasha means the pot space or room space, limited space. There's no real difference. It's already there, but some procedure needs to be done. So this is the first step. Okay, now let's resume. So in the third mantra, in the Jagrata Avastha, because this is where the inquiries begin, and this is where the inquiry ends. And it is supplemented by some very good examples that I have to use as part of this procedure. Swapnavastha, we will do that next, the dream state. As we have mentioned before, it is not an accident of nature how the human being is given these tools. And so these tools, it's kind of like, it's, I don't know, like I'm just visualizing this. These tools are like, you can do the procedure yourself, but let me tell you how to do it. You don't need any external tools. So the right kind of thinking, the right kind of attitude are the steps of the procedure. So in the first step, which is in the Jagrata Avastha, it says you have to expand your vision from something which is totally engaged with your body-mind complex into something which is much larger. And here are the steps to do so. So we summarized in the last class that there are two main ways of doing it. One is that you begin to appreciate that the macrocosmic world that you and I are experiencing and the microcosmic world that you and I are experiencing are really one and the same. And there aren't any differences. I have just chosen, because of some very good reasons, to just focus in on the microcosmic. But otherwise, if you think about it, like for example, the space in the microcosm is the same as the space in the macrocosm. There's no difference. The Pancha Mahabhutas, the five great elements, including the space, are all the same. So the solidity of the body and the solidity of the world is the same. The prana of the body and the prana, which is the vayu of the world, is the same. So I should just begin to see that there is no real reason for me to limit my estimation of who I am just to this microcosmic creation. There is in fact a larger world. And so, one interesting, I was thinking about this. One can say, but how can I do that? I can't really visualize. How can I sacrifice my sense of limitation by just pretending that I am bigger than it? Isn't it just a pretension? No, it's not a pretension. It is a lack of appreciation. I was just thinking about that. If you look at causes that are larger than a person, don't we buy into those causes? We do every day. So, for example, the cause of the Palestinians. These days, that's a very popular thing to do. So many, it reminds me of the year I came to this country when the Vietnam War was going on, and I was a student at Berkeley. And the amount of rallies against the war and so on was enormous. And what I am now seeing by just watching on television is the same kind of groundswell, against Israel and the fact that that the Palestinians are suffering and so on. So there is a greater cause. So if you think about it, it's not just that you are sitting at home and you're saying, why should I bother about the Palestinians? That's not me. That's not my body. But you give it up. If somebody calls you and says, we're going to have a rally in Sproul Hall in Berkeley, you say, when? I'll be there. And it's going to go for the whole day and you may not be able to eat anything. That's fine. You give it up. Even larger than that is the sacrifice for a country. It's a very famous stories from the Second World War. People sacrifice for their country. The Germans, the Japanese, how the kamikaze pilots, they would sacrifice their life for their country. So it is very possible for us to sacrifice my individuality for something bigger. It's possible. It's just that the cause is not clear to me. That's it. And so when the cause is appreciated, then the bhava, the sense of limitation, will pull you into something larger. It will happen. So this is the first of the two ways of enlarging your vision from Vishwa to Vaishvanara. The second one is in some way easier and more effective. And easier and effective means that I have to be prepared for it. You know, this is one of the things that we will talk about as we go through this course. You pick out some fundamental concepts that permeate through this uh, entire Karika and its pravachans by Swami Akhandanandaji and Swami Dayanandaji. Some basic principles. This was very important. So, for example, one of those principles is that, and we have talked about this before also, it's not something new, but I'm just pointing it out, is that the appreciation of the totality is neither difficult nor easy. This was one of the favorite ways Swami Dayanandaji used to talk about it. And now I'm getting a little better appreciation of it. That's what's happening to me already. All these things that I'm now beginning to really appreciate more clearly from the reading of Swami Akhandananda's books was already done by Swamiji when I went studied with him, but I wasn't ready. Those were kind of like words I would write down and so on and so forth. Didn't have a deep impression on me. Now it's deeper for me. So that means that my own preparation is better. Not only preparation, but my own thinking. And that thinking is really what I'm talking about and going into the step number 2. The second part of the step number 1. And that is, so this is exactly what I'm saying. When your mind is more rajasic and tamasic rather than sattvic, you only appreciate things that are very tangible. But as your mind becomes more sattvic, your mind becomes appreciative of something which is not obviously tangible, but is more effusive and lasting and important. So, you know, this is exactly what antakarana shuddhi, the purity of the mind that appears in our Shastra again and again. Make your mind pure, make your mind pure. What is the reason for it? What's not the reason, but what's the sense of it? And so I'll summarize that and then go on to this example, then go on. I'll summarize it by saying that a sattvic mind is less involved in seeing things around me and more involved in how I see things. What is the process of thinking? What is the cause? Who's the seer? Not the seen. So in terms of the drishya viveka, the antakarana shuddhi means that if the mind's focus is on drishya, that means it has got a disproportionate sense of rajas and tamas. But really speaking, as sattva grows according to the instructions given by the Shastra, and this is going to be a major theme in this whole course, is that please divert your energy, your focus, your attention, not to what you see, but how you see it. Okay, so I want to make that point as one of the important pillars, conceptual pillars of this whole teaching of Mandukya Karika, and in the rest of it also. We're just doing a very thorough analysis based on one of the most advanced ways of looking at it by Swami, by Gaudapadacharya. So then now we come back to the second way of looking at this, enlarging it from Vishwa to Vaishwanara. First one we already saw. Here's the second one. The second one is to begin to reflect that I am the Sakshi of not only this body, but the entire cosmos. At the moment, my mistake is I am oblivious of the fact that I am the Sakshi of the whole cosmos. I am totally involved in becoming the Sakshi of my own body and mind. This is a mistake. And so as the mind grows more sattvic, as I begin to become more educated, really I think it is, yes, there is some practice involved, there is some abhyasa, there is ekagrata and so on, as I've been mentioning to some of the students who have this question. It is more a question of being educated. I am uneducated as far as my mental focus is concerned. So it's not as though you have to do anything to look at the cosmos differently. Just observe, oh my goodness, I am the same Sakshi. As soon as I wake up, the entire cosmos becomes my object. And included in that is my body. So this is the second way of enlarging my vision from the limited to the unlimited. Okay? So with that, we wrap up the mantra number 3. So let's now go to the mantra number 4. So let's at least chant it. So this is the Mandukya Upanishad, mantra number 4, which by the way is given, I just happened to look up in Swami Dayananji's book on page 117, and in Swami Akhandananda's book, I don't remember the page number, but it's pretty... 162. Okay, so let's read it. Mantra number 4. स्वप्नस्थानो अन्तः प्रज्ञः सप्ताङ्गः एकोनविंशतिमुखः प्रविविक्तभुक्तैजसो द्वितीयपादः स्वप्नस्थानो अन्तः प्रज्ञः सप्ताङ्गः एकोनविंशतिमुखः प्रविविक्तभुक्तैजसः द्वितीयपादः. So he says, Swami Paramarthananda's English translation is, so he uses the word quarter and we use the word step. So that's the difference, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. The second quarter is Taijasa, whose field is the dream state, whose consciousness is inward, who has 7 limbs, who has 19 mouths, and who is the experiencer of subtle objects. So in the translation that I did here, based on Swami Akhandananda's, the one whose presence is the dream. Where will I find this person, Taijasa? How will I recognize this person? You will recognize it in the dream. Every day. Not as though, you miss it. Ishvara is very funny. Because not only funny, but extremely intelligent. Really, funny means that I fail to appreciate it. What it means is that if something is important for me, it is repeated for me. It's kind of just like, somebody saying, by the way, make sure you're going to grocery store, make sure you get this for me. And so you're also, that happens to me, my wife really sometimes really gets upset. I told you this and you were not listening. And so really your mind is there. So if somebody is very insistent that this is an important thing to get, like you're missing milk, then we'll say, did you hear what I say? Did you write down milk as one of the things that you have to get? So it's a repetition. So the Paramatma is exactly like this. If the dream was not an important thing as part of my procedure of correcting my mistake, if that was not an important thing, it would happen maybe once in 10 years. But this is so important. My whole analysis, as we will see this is going to be a very major way of really analyzing and dissecting and understanding myself. The dream is a very important part of that procedure. The Ishvara makes sure that you do not miss it. You miss it last week, miss it yesterday, there's another dream coming up. Until you begin to really utilize it for your own thinking. Anyway, so mantra number 4 says, the one whose presence is the dream and whose form is made up purely by the mind. Pravivik, the book, separate from anything outside, purely by the mind, inward directed, and who has 7 limbs as before, 19 mouths, that person is called Taijasa. And this is the second step of the Atma. Second step for, you can even substitute the, instead of the Atma, you can say the second step for a mumukshu or a jigyasu, for a student. For a student to take the second step, the first step we saw in mantra number 3 is the second step. And so this will become a very useful step of the procedure. So now we analyze the nature of the subtle body, the Sukshma Sharira. So in presenting this analysis, Swami Akhandananda says that the basis of the analysis of the previous verse, where we see that the Vyashti, the microcosmic gross body, is just a way of looking at Samashti, the macrocosmic gross body. Let me make sure that I understand what this point is. So hold on just a second. Okay. So basically I've already gone through this point when I was explaining the first aspect of step number 1, that really essentially the microcosmic and the macrocosmic situation is very similar, but I failed to see it. They are the same akasha, same pancha mahabhutas, etc. So this being the case, there is no difference in the samashti sthula sharira. Then we extend that logic to say, in that case, how can there be a difference in the vyashti and samashti sukshma sharira? If there is no difference in the sthula sharira between vyashti and samashti, between microcosmic and macrocosmic, then how can there be a difference between vyashti and samashti in the sukshma sharira? There cannot be. So one can ask the question, how can you say that? I don't understand the similarity. So, in order to understand the similarity, consider the relationship between, as a big first step, between space and mind, akasha and manaha. Consider the relationship. How? The question is the mind inside the akasha? Is the mind inside space? Is the mind kind of like, he gives this example, I think it's a good example, Swami Akhandananda does. Is the mind like fireflies in Hindi called jugnu? The jugnu is a firefly. And at night time you find that fireflies are in the space all over. Very beautiful sight. I'm sure that you may have experienced that. So is the mind like that? Is it like fireflies inside the space? Certainly not. So here we take advantage of the dream example. Because in the dream we see where the space is actually inside the mind, not the other way around. Not only the space, but all objects in the space, everything is all inside the mind. This is the example from the dream. By the way, I'm going to give you, let me pause at this point and discuss the importance of giving the dream as an example that you can experience. The importance of giving dream as an example should be appreciated. Okay? This point can be brought in at any point, but in a much more advanced discussion later on in the Karika, where there is a discussion between the Vedantic way of looking at things and other schools of thought. And the one that was taken up for this analysis was the Sankhya system. Sankhya system. So very briefly, we won't go into the detail, I just want to make a point here. In the Sankhya system, they have a distinction between Prakriti and Purusha. And the Prakriti is the cause of the problems for Purusha. And not only the Prakriti in general, but the imbalance between Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. If they are in balance, according to Sankhya, then the Prakriti is harmless. It is there. It's kind of like, a little bit like the Ayurvedic system, where you have Kapha and, the other ones, Pitta, and what is the third one? So those three have to be in balance. If they're not there, then your body becomes ill. So similarly, the Sankhya also believes that the Prakriti is, when it is Samyavastha, then it is okay. But one of the things becomes lopsided, then it creates a problem for human being. They've got their very funny system of looking at this and so on. Okay, anyway, one of the things they say is, so we argue, we ask them questions. Not ask them to put them down, but for our own clarification. We say, do you say that the Prakriti in the Samyavastha is formless? They say, yeah, it's formless. And then you say that when it becomes imbalanced, it becomes formful? They say, yes. Yes, the formless becomes formful. As we also have to discuss this same point. Okay? So this will come up in much more detail later on. But for this particular instance, I want to just show you how important it is to give an example of the dream. Okay? So we say, so you feel that the formless becomes formful? They say, yes, of course. So we say, where is an example? Can you show an example? This is where the problem starts. They say, no, we cannot show an example, but just believe it. This is a very important point because, in the analysis of that the mountain is on fire, Vanniman Parvataha, that the mountain is on fire. This is an anumana, this is a supposition, this is a supposition, but the supposition cannot be true unless you have an experiential example where black smoke is known to you as a result of fire alone. Black smoke cannot be steam. A steam can be without fire, but a black smoke cannot be without fire. And you know that from your example of your kitchen, that if something burns, then it gives out black smoke. So based on that, when you see a black smoke on the horizon, your supposition is that it must be on fire. The mountain is on fire. So an example is an important way to establish the truth of something that you're not sure of. So in the case of the Vedantins, the dream example is very important. In the same way, like you have your fire in the kitchen. Because unless you have a dream example that you can experience, you cannot extrapolate it to estimate the reality of that in your Jagrata Avastha. This is a very important point. It's not like, I'm dreaming, these are the steps Ishvara wants us to take in order for us to discover total Ananda. Now we go back to, I just wanted to make that point separately. Please remember this. So I want to go back to the thinking of where is it the mind inside the Akasha or the Akasha inside the mind. Okay. By the way, one other point just to finish the definition of the Sankhya system. So anytime you have a logic which is not supported by an experienced example, it's called pure logic which is useless. It's called Shushka Tarka. So this comes up in our Shastra again and again. Please do not resort to pure logic unless it is supported by solid evidence. The mind can postulate anything. The God is over here, God is in heaven, etc., etc. Doesn't mean anything until you see an example of that. So this is a very important point. This is called Tarka. In the Sadhana Panchakam also, it says, what is it called? Shrutimata Tarka Samyatam. That only the Tarka which is supported by the Shruti should be resorted to, not pure logic of your own. So that was just a separate point. Anyway, let's go back to this example. So, so the entire dream is nothing but the mind. This is the example. Armed with this example, we're going to extrapolate to say that the waking experience is also nothing but the mind. So the space that you feel is separate from you is actually not. It is also a projection of the mind. How can you say that? Because you see that in the dream. Yeah, but that was just a dream. This is real. That is not real. No. No. You cannot say that. In fact, this is what the whole Karika is going to show, is that fundamentally the two are the same. In fact, in Vedanta, as Swami Kananda clearly points out in this, and Swami Dhananji also, same thing, that the only distinction, if you want to say it this way, between a dream and a waking state is the length of the experience. That's it. You cannot make any in fact, the two similarities are overwhelmingly the same. I didn't state that right. It is the similarities are overwhelming. They're pretty much the same. Small distinction that the dream occurs very quickly, and oftentimes the setup is not repeated, generally not repeated. Some of the characters may be the same, but otherwise the setup is not repeated. Whereas in the Jagrat Avastha, the setup is kept for you for a length of time. But that doesn't change the very fundamental character of the Jagrat Avastha. So this is what is going to be talked about. So in the same way, in the waking body, the waking body is in the mind. It's very funny. It is not as though I have a body and inside the body, this is exactly what my experience is. Inside the body, I have some software. That's not the reality. So let's follow the reasoning for this not being the reality. So there it is said that really your whole projection of yourself includes the fact that you are a solid body. Not any different than in a dream. In fact, the paribhasha means a specific definition, airtight definition, not specific, airtight. That means that you cannot shake it. The paribhasha definition of a dream see, this is important to see. A definition of dream is the one that appears to be totally true, but isn't. This is the definition of a dream. Totally true. And really speaking, we only see that it is not real after we wake up. And this is not any different from the waking experience. It appears to be true, but it disappears. All these things will be talked about as examples in reality and so on. So much will be talked about that how my experiences of people, of my relatives, my friends, they all go, they disappear. For the time being, I am very involved. I like that person, I dislike that person. These are my friends, these are my enemies. This is mine, this is yours. We're very involved with that. Same thing happens in a dream. And in my life, I find things come and go. They seem to hold my attention. I'm very serious about it. My job, I don't like my job, this, that, or the other. They disappear. Swami Akhandananda says, I have had so much experience with people who were devastated by the death of their spouses and their children. Devastated. Close to committing suicide. They'll feel my life has no meaning whatsoever. It's gone. My wife, my husband, my son, my daughter, they're gone. And I don't have anything to live for. What am I doing here? And he says, I see them a few months later. I think I told you this. He says that one day I was driving by and I found this person who nearly was crying and was saying, I'm devastated. And by the roadside, he was eating golgappas and chaat and with friends and happy and just enjoying himself and so on. And I said, I smiled to myself. See, this is how the apparent reality of things go away. As we will see, we have had so many relationships, so much involvement, so much sense of reality. This is what my life is and so on. There's no reality to it. It just goes away. You continue on with a new set of friends, new life. Even in this life, forget about the next life. Swami Akhandananda makes a big point of that. He says, I have seen where friends becomes enemies. And enemies that you dislike become your friends. Yes, this is a very funny situation. Anirvachaniya. This is exactly what happens. You cannot say that the waking world is different from the dream. Yes, there are certain stability, or there is a certain stability of relationships which should be used in a way to enhance your understanding of what is happening. That's a different thing altogether. But fundamentally, the two are the same. This is what Shastra says. Please don't object, don't disregard it. So, in the second step, it says that the jigyasu needs to take is that the entire subtle body my entire set of thoughts is Taijasa. And so here what we will see later on also, that the subtle body, which is exclusively the domain in the dream, is also very important in the Jagrat Avastha. Very obvious. Well, we need to point that out. You see, in the dream, you have nothing but subtle body. There's no gross body. If there is a gross body, that is also within the subtle body. But in the waking state, really speaking, your experience is mostly through the subtle body. So it's a dream-like situation even in the waking world. So this is a fact. If you analyze your life, yes, once in a while, like it happened to me, that you had a problem with the physical body. But that sense of illness and so on is nothing compared to the illness of the mind. All my life, not my life, but in our lives, 99% of that is all subtle body related experiences. We don't like this, we like this, we want to go to new places, I'm not happy with myself, I want change, I'm lonely. All this has to do with the mind. Anyway, we'll look into that. Okay, so one other thing to look at here, and perhaps we will end the class with this very interesting example. So Swami Khandananda says that each jiva leads a triple life. This is also a very important thing that we will elaborate on probably in the next class, but let's start on it here. So each jiva leads a triple life, three distinct ways of transacting. He gives an example. He says that supposing you have a Vaidya. Vaidya means a doctor whose knowledge is based on traditional medicines, who becomes an important doctor in Ayurveda or in the Chinese system or in Jaini system, whatever, it doesn't make, but not something that you learn from the Western way of doing. So he's a person who is a Vaidya. And my maternal grandfather's younger brother was a Vaidya in Amritsar. And my own grandfather was a homeopathic doctor. But his younger brother was a trained Vaidya. So he used to give Ayurvedic medicines to people and so on. So this is the example given in this triple life. So he says, consider that kind of a person. So he says, that doctor has three ways of leading his life. One is where he sets up a shop and advises people on the medicine, keeps a stock of the medicines, and discovers what people's problems are, and based on his own experience, then he advises this is what you should take. This is what happened to me recently when I'm getting some advice from Dr. Jayarajan of the Kerala Ayurveda. He says that I find that your immune system is compromised, so he's giving me some medicines to strengthen my. He listened to me, and very nice, very analytical person, and so I'm actually following his advice, and I'm getting some help. So this is the Vaidya who sets up shop and has a stock of medicines. He advises you and gets some remuneration backs, etc. So this is one part of his life. And the second part of his life is where he experiments things. He reads a lot. He experiments with medicines. He makes things, different combinations of them. So this is a laboratory. And the third one is where he just rests and really just enjoys himself, goes to movies, whatever it is, watches television, relaxes, eats, whatever. These are the three ways. So he says each jiva is exactly like that. So what happens is the Jagrat Avastha is where we transact. The Swapnavastha, the dream state, is where we experiment. And the Sushupti Avastha, the deep sleep state, is where we rest. Anyway, so this is just an introduction to this whole world of samskaras that we will take up in more depth in the next class. So I will wind up this class for today, and then we will go from there. Okay. Om Asato ma Satgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Anyway, while I open up my laptop and look at people that are attending this class, let me just make a quick announcement that, as you know, we have a get-together next Saturday, the 16th, for a satsang and question answer and just sharing a meal, getting together and seeing each other after quite a while, face to face. Please, hopefully you can come for that. I would love to see you. Even if you have not registered, doesn't matter, just come. The registration is just for a meal, and we can order some extra ones. So in case you forget to register, that's okay too. If you can register, that'd be better. But if you just please come in the last minute, so it'll start at 10 o'clock on that Vaishnava Parivara place where we had talks by Swami Sattva Vidyananda, Swatma Vidyananda, sorry. And so please come for that. I would love to see you. Okay? Thank you. Right. Vata. Yes, you're right, Jaya. Kapha, Pitta, and Vata. Keshav says, thanks for defining, explaining dream. May you please also do for Manush. How did Manush come into the picture? I need to understand what you mean by that. Anyway, you can send me an email, Keshav, and I will be happy to understand what you mean by Manush. And what's the source of your question? I'll be happy to do that. Oh, seeing Chandra here. Chandra, welcome back from India. Reminds me that we need to, I wouldn't say finalize, but move ahead with the retreat in Sailorsburg. And Chandra, if you can help me to, I think we have about 22 people that have already registered this year. And that reminds me, I have talked to a few of you offline, just separately, and you were saying you were interested. I know, Anjali, you had said that you were interested. Please let me know what your plans are. Greg, you also, I saw you in the Jewish Center the other day, and you were saying you are interested in coming. So please, all of you, if you could please let me know if you can join this retreat in Sailorsburg on June 1st through the 8th. That'll be wonderful. So please do so. Don't hesitate to give me the details so we can start to plan about airline tickets and so on. All right, if there's no other questions, then I take your leave, and hopefully I'll see you on Tuesday. I think I survived it without going to any coughing steps, so I'm encouraged, so I think it'll be good. Okay, Hari Om.